Welcome back to Triple S Breakdowns. Today we're breaking down House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 6, Small Folk. Let's begin. Point number 1. So the opening credits have changed quite a bit from last episode. After the depiction of the Great Council at Harrenhal, instead of showing Alicent's entrance at Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding party in her green dress and showing the greens and blacks sat at the table, it cuts straight to showing Aegon on the Iron Throne and Rhaenyra on the Dragonstone throne, the return to the depiction of Vhagar killing Lucerys and Arrax, last seen in the opening of Season 2, Episode 2. Then we see Jaehaerys being decapitated and the hanging of the Ratcatchers, and finally a new addition, the aftermath of the Battle of Rook's Rest and the Dance of the Three Dragons from 2 episodes ago. As well as the dead men, we see, I assume to be Aemond standing between Sunfire and Maleys, who are lying on the ground with Vhagar flying overhead. And if you look closely, you'll see there's no blood coming from Sunfire, but there is blood coming from Maleys, and it's that black blood mixed with the red blood of the men that seeps towards the Iron Throne, which tells us that Sunfire is most likely not dead, just beaten the hell up like her rider, and the mixing of the black and red blood symbolizes that both men and dragon's blood will both have to be spilled to win the Iron Throne. Point number 2, hearing the Reigns of Castamere being played 129 years before the events of the Rhaen-Tarbeck Revolt in 261 AC that inspired its creation, makes me think of the character of Simon in the 2000 version of Jesus Christ Superstar having a tattoo of a cross on his arm before Christ has even been crucified. Point number 3, if you're curious where the Golden Tooth is in relation to other locations, we can see on this map from atlasofIceandfireblog.wordpress.com that the Golden Tooth is about halfway along the River Road, as it is called, between Casterly Rock and River Run. Point number 4, just a nitpick, but it seems a bit of Aemon's dialogue here was ADR'd.
Are the Lannisters so diminished that they cannot march from the Tooth to Harrenhal?
His jaw movements don't match what he's saying, and his voice doesn't sound like it was recorded in the small council chamber. Sounds too clean to me. Point number 5, in Fire and Blood, it wasn't Aemond who came up with the idea to make an alliance with the Triarchy, but Otto's when he was still Aegon's hand. In fact, waiting for the Triarchy to decide whether to accept the terms set by Otto, exclusive trading rights at King's Landing in return for clearing the Sea Snake's blockade of the Gullet, was part of the reason why an impatient Aegon removed Otto as hand. Point number 6, there's no mention of ever being suggested that Alicent might marry the Red Kraken to ensure his loyalty to the Greens, the Red Kraken being Dalton Greyjoy, who at the time of the Dance of the Dragons in the books was 16. Point number 7, and there we have the final nail in the coffin for Alicent wanting her voice to be heard and to have a say in what's happening. Though in the Inside the Episode video for this episode on the Game of Thrones YouTube channel, Ryan Condal reveals that Aemond didn't dismiss his mother from the small council out of cruelty, but because she doesn't actually have a role on it. She's just a holdover from when she stepped in after Viserys died. So he still cares about his mum, he just doesn't want her on the small council telling everyone what she thinks, probably because a fair amount of what she thinks goes against what Aemond wants to do, so, it makes sense why he wouldn't want her on the small council. Point number 8, Paddy Considine's back.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
A double surprise actually, since when we got a second appearance by young Rhaenyra when I thought we were going to see Viserys again, and that we've also seen Daemon's late wife Laena and his late mother Alyssa, I thought the only ghosts of Daemon's past we were going to see were only going to be the women. But then here comes Viserys saying a bunch of what he said to Daemon back in Season 1, Episode 1. Still holding out hope we get another appearance of Daemon's first wife Rhea Royce though. Point number 9, I love how so much interaction between Daemon and Alice has been introduced into the show when Fire and Blood tells us, whatever her powers, it would seem Daemon Targaryen was immune to them, for little is heard of this supposed sorceress whilst the prince held Harrenhal. Also, I have some thoughts on how close to and trusting of Daemon is with Alice, but I'll get into that more towards the end of the video as it's connected to another point. Point number 10, book accurate the way Stefan goes out here, burnt alive when trying to claim sea smoke. Hardcore the Dragon Keeper slicing his own throat whilst on fire reminds me of this tank guy blowing his brains out whilst on fire from the movie Fury. Point number 11, in Fire and Blood, Aemond never decides to replace Criston as hand with Otto, nor does he order Larys to send for Otto. Point number 12, Aemond giving Aegon his small council ball token thing could be read in different ways according to Aemond actor Ewan Mitchell in this Variety article. It's the king's marker. Maybe Aemond is giving it back to his brother. Maybe he's trying to reassure him that everything's going to be okay. You'll be king after you recover. maybe lure him into that false sense of security. I like to think it symbolises Aemond taking Aegon off the board. He's removed his mother from the small council and now Aegon by getting rid of his token. And I wouldn't be surprised if Aemon brought his own unique token to the next small council meeting. Point number 13, if you're curious who this dragon is, it's Stormcloud and he belongs to Aegon the Younger. Point number 14, in the books there was never any mention of there being any wild dragons in the Vale. George R.R. Martin actually has something to say about this show change on his blog on georgerrmartin.com. My dragons are creatures of the sky. They fly and can cross mountains and plains, cover hundreds of miles, but they don't unless their riders take them there. They are not nomadic. During the heyday of Valyria, there were 40 dragon riding families with hundreds of dragons amongst them, but aside from our Targaryens, all of them stayed close to the freehold and the lands of the long summer. From time to time, a dragon rider might visit Volantis or another Valyrian colony, even settle there for a few years, but never permanently. Think about it, if dragons were nomadic, they would have overrun half of Essos and the Doom would only have killed a few of them. Similarly, the dragons of Westeros seldom wander far from Dragonstone. Elsewise, after 300 years, we would have had dragons all over the realm and every noble house would have a few. The 3 wild dragons mentioned in Fire and Blood have lairs on Dragonstone. The rest can be found in the Dragon Pit of King's Landing or in deep caverns under the Dragonmont. Luke flies Arrax to Storm's End and Jace to Winterfell, yes, but the dragons would not have flown there on their own, save under very special circumstances. You won't find dragons hunting the Riverlands or the Reach or the Vale, or roaming the Northlands or the Mountains of Dawn. Point number 15, Grand Maester Orwyll, whilst chatting to Alicent, calls back to Criston murdering Lyman Beesbury in Season 1, Episode 9, which has caused House Beesbury to side with the Blacks and fight against House Hightower. Point number 16, there's been speculation on Helaena pointing out one of her crickets has stopped singing, due to any weird thing happening with Helaena, could be foreshadowing of something to come. From what I've seen, people have latched onto there being 3 cages of crickets, so the cages could either represent Alicent's 3 sons, Aegon, Aemond and Daeron, or the 3 riderless dragons on Dragonstone, Seasmoke, Silverwing and Vermithor. As Gwaine tells Alicent that Daeron is just as adept with his lute as well as his sword, the silent cricket could represent Daeron putting down his lute and taking up his sword. He has stopped singing, i.e. making music. Or it could represent Seasmoke, who was making a bunch of noise whilst flying about as Mysaria watched in Season 2 Episode 3, but by the end of this episode, he has gone silent, stopped singing because he's found himself a new rider. What do you think, if anything, Helena's cricket no longer singing could mean? Let me know in the comments below. Point number 17, at first I thought we were getting yet another goddamn appearance from Cheese's dog Cheddar, but turns out it's not the same dog. Cheddar's probably off hanging out wherever Cheese's decayed corpse has been dumped. Point number 18, without spoiling anything, this guy who gets his arm cut off could actually be the first appearance of a major character from Fire and Blood, who I'll just say is known as the Shepherd. Point number 19, this mob scene is very reminiscent of the mob scene from the book A Clash of Kings. The mob are both motivated by hunger, a member of the royal family is hit in the face by something, an arm gets chopped off, and a member of the Kingsguard is killed by the mob. Point number 20, we see after escaping the mob, Alicent has suffered a cut on her left arm, which reminds me of when she cut Rhaenyra's left arm with the Valyrian steel dagger in Season 1 Episode 7. Make of that similarity what you will. Point number 21, with what Larys says to Aegon about how his foot looked when he was born. Was it Alis that Larys' father Lionel accused of causing it via sorcery and spells? And if it was, that begs the question, just how long has Alis been living in Harrenhal and how old is she actually? Could we have another Melisandre situation on our hands again? Point number 22, I can't believe they got CM Brook back as Emma just for this scene where she plays a corpse. I'm wagering she'll reappear not as a corpse but instead alive in either of the last 2 episodes of this season in another Daemon vision. Point number 23, it's hard to feel sympathy for Viserys here when he was the one who ordered his wife to be sacrificed in an attempt to save their baby. He never gave her the chance to make the choice for herself. He made it for her, and it cost him both his wife and his son. Point number 24, in Fire and Blood, Alis never journeyed to Riverrun and didn't play any part in the death of Lord Grover Tully. In the book, Grover Tully supported the Greens, but his grandson, Elmo Tully, kept Riverrun neutral for a while, and when Elmo eventually declared for the Blacks instead, Mushroom in his testimony claims Grover died of apoplexy at his grandson's actions. Point number 25. In Fire and Blood, Seasmoke never sought out another human to become his new rider. Corlys actually brought both Alan and Adam to the Sowing of the Seas, as Grandmaster Munkin calls it, though others preferred the Red Sowing, where Adam claimed Seasmoke. And Seasmoke taking a new rider in the show would suggest that Laenor Velaryon has in fact died off screen, as dragons can only have one rider at a time. Anyone else wanting to ride the dragon would have to do so as a passenger along with the dragon's rider. Point number 26. In Season 1, Episode 2, Mysaria tells Daemon,
I ensured long ago that I would never be threatened by childbirth.
Yet here it seems she tells Rhaenyra that it was some form of abortion that's caused her to no longer be able to bear children. So which is it? Was she lying to Daemon, and for what purpose? Or is she lying to Rhaenyra, and for what purpose? Also, with her mentioning scars and giving two different stories, is she trying to be Christopher Nolan's Joker or something?
I want to know how I got these scars.
Point number 27. In Fire and Blood, a little later in the dance, it's revealed that Daemon has resumed sleeping with Mysaria with Rhaenyra's consent. Could Rhaenyra and Mysaria kissing here indicate that they are instead adapting Daemon sleeping with Mysaria whilst married to Rhaenyra as Rhaenyra sleeping with Mysaria whilst married to Daemon instead? I've also seen people criticising this kiss as being forced and woke as well by the loud minority of morons who believe in the silly superstition that is wokeness. But you have to consider how impulsive and reckless young Rhaenyra was characterised in Season 1 before she made more of an attempt to control herself as she grew older, coupled with Rhaenyra and Mysaria growing closer and closer together after the death of Rhaenys. So this is her impulsiveness and recklessness re-emerging, and the closeness that has been growing between Rhaenyra and Mysaria boiling over into intimacy. I mean, out of all of Rhaenyra's advisors, Mysaria has been the one supporting Rhaenyra the most, agreeing with her plans, complimenting her, reassuring her. And if you didn't already get the feeling Rhaenyra might enjoy being physically intimate with another woman from how she interacted with Alicent when they were friends in Season 1, in Fire and Blood, it said Rhaenyra became fond, and more than fond, of her good sister, Lady Laena. Mushroom even claims that when Rhaenyra was married to Laenor, they would share a bed with Khal Corey, as it aroused the princess to watch the men disporting with one another, he tells us, and from time to time the two would include her in their pleasures. As always, we have to take what Mushroom says with a ladle of salt, but if what he says is true, in my own personal experience when it comes to women who enjoy watching two men pleasuring each other in bed, it isn't a stretch to assume that same woman also wouldn't mind engaging in same-sex bedroom fun herself. So no, I wouldn't consider this kiss between Rhaenyra and Mysaria forced, nor would I deem it woke, since that's not a thing, no matter how much idiots want it to be. Calling back to point number 9, I think is actually the relationship that's developed between Daemon and Alice that you could argue has been forced. Like, why out of everyone in Harrenhal is it this strange woman who says weird things that Daemon trusts and goes to for advice and help? What sense does that make? To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the dog Hugh says hello to not being Cheddar. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the hilarious reveal that Alicent's son Daeron has turned out alright because he's been nowhere near King's Landing and his mother. Thank you all for watching Triple S Breakdowns. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, be sure to subscribe, and why not leave a comment below with your feedback and anything that I missed but you noticed. I would love to hear from you all. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.